So recently, I jumped into making some melodic house, more melodic, moving slightly away from tech house, but trying to keep the sounds. My inspiration, making music, new John Summit style. That's exactly what we did. So in this video, I'm going to break down how I made my new track, Emotions, that I am still trying to sign or, get played by big DJ. So if you want a copy, let me know. I can send you the link. Yeah, this is how I made it. Let's jump into the project. For a quick note, I've turned the limiter off on the mastering chain because it uses a lot of CPU. This project is very full and all that does is make it louder because I didn't bounce this project to audio, so I've got a lot of Serum and MIDI running. So the order in which I did this project, I actually started with the drums, which is something I don't normally do, but I knew I wanted a really tight melodic house, tech house drum sound. So I thought if I spend some time picking the right sounds, I will get the perfect drum sounds. So this is what I did. Believe it or not, I actually started with the shaker that I found on Splice. I just searched John Summit shaker and this came up. Then on top of that shaker, I just added some hats and a couple of claps to give the classic house groove. What I did with one of these claps, which might be a little bit different, is I shoved it slightly, as you can see from the piano roll, slightly in front of the hit. So you get that syncopated hit a little bit and we get something like this. As you can hear, that second clap is hitting slightly early, so you get that, it feels a bit more human. I actually added a third clap for width as well and give it some auto pan on that, so that one goes really wide. On top of that, I added a clave, which is like for some off-hit pattern. So from the inspiration I found, the references, there's a lot of clave use. I thought I'd use it here, maybe a wood block, but you can use any percussion you want really, whatever sound you're trying to go for. And then I added a closed hat for a bit more texture in the drops. It's subtle, but it is there. Then one more loop in the drop for the drums as well. So really what I'm doing there is filling out the space within the drums and making sure I have differences throughout the track. I then went on to this synth pluck, which is something I wanted to make that was a constant note throughout the track that told you what the key was early on, and it was syncopated. By syncopated, I'm meaning the rhythm I'm playing in. As you can see here, in a bar, it's hitting on the offbeat around constantly, so it's got that weird sort of bounce to it. If I play it, you'll hear what I mean. As you can see, it's sort of pushing around the beat, so it feels rhythmic, and that goes throughout the entire track. As you can see, doesn't change. Middle note. Now you could move around with this. I've done that in other tracks, but for this track here, I kept it on that note constantly, the A note, because that's the root of this track. And on top of that, I added another pluck, which was a bit more rhythmically intense. It's playing in like a sort of, not a triplet, but 3-hit pattern with some alternating velocity. And that, again, constantly plays throughout the track. This has got a lot more processing, but nothing that crazy. Just delay, reverb, saturation, more saturation, reverb, EQ, sidechain. Sidechain gives it a really good bounce, opposed to using a kickstart. That gives me a really good bounce, so I get this. And that goes round and round throughout the build-up. Now with the drop, I actually turned this one into more of a pattern. And for this note, I didn't put it on the root note because the other pluck is hitting the root note. I thought I'd put this on the 5th. And I don't know a lot about music theory, but I do know hitting the 5th, it always has that nice sound to it. So I put this one on the 5th, being the E note. And then in the drop, I actually gave it a bit of pattern. And this doesn't quite follow the progression of the chords and the piano, but it works because if you play anything in key, it will work. And I kind of just went for something that sounded good in terms of the progression. Kept the triple hit patterns, and this is what we get in the drop. It's just nice, it moves around, and then in the B section I gave it a different progression just to keep it interesting. And so with both of those syncopated synth hits and the drums, I moved on to the kick and the bass. Coming from making a lot of tech house, the kick and the bass is always really important to me, and so I spent some serious time getting this right. I went on a little bit of a different route from some looking on YouTube and stuff here, but again, it's actually pretty simple. So if we look at the kick, something new that I've been doing that I'm really liking is adding a bit of shine to the kick. That's giving it that little bit of top end that it doesn't normally have. Now I got this from a John Summit video he did where he was breaking down his new track and he was talking about this. I thought I'd try it, and it's game changing. So if we play the kick by itself, we have this. It's a nice kick, but then if I add the shine, you'll hear the difference. And I'll turn it off. Notice how we have that little bit of like tick on the top, and that is literally me playing a closed hat sound right on the start of the MIDI of each kick. And then I've also got double kicks in there that come up intermittently and play a little bit lower. So for the bass, the juicy bass, what I've done here is I wrote a pattern and then I separated the mid bass and the sub bass because I didn't really feel like I was getting a good separation, so I thought I'd make an individual sub bass for this track. Normally I try and get it all in one bass line, but here I made a sub. Just do what you got to do for the track, isn't it? So something that's really important for this sort of melodic style house is to have that rhythmic bass that is constantly flowing, a bit trance-like. This isn't as fast as trance, this is 127, but it's that trance feel. And the way I did that was I put in a really simple pattern, again, the same triple hits I'm doing on the synth, but every middle hit is up an octave. I also have a chord progression for it. So we're going from the A, up to the C, up to the D, and back down to the F end bit. So when we play it with the octave up hits, we get a really cool rhythm. And keeping that progression constant throughout the track gives it that real nice, you know, continuity. So obviously I mentioned I separated the mid and the sub bass. You might not be able to hear it very well because it is pure sub bass, it's just a sine wave, but it sounds like this. It's the same progression playing in the correct octave so it doesn't sound too deep or high, and it follows the bass exactly. It's the same thing. But what I've got them separated means I have total control over both frequencies. As you can see from the EQs here on the sub, I'm cutting everything above 90 Hertz, and on the main bass, I'm cutting everything below 85. So we're definitely not getting any clash in the low end. And one other thing I added from listening to a lot of tutorials and things about melodic house is having some sort of consistent syncopated bass that runs throughout the track that sits in the nice mid-range, similar to the pluck that we were talking about earlier, but hitting a slightly different frequency. And in this case, I just found this pluck that I'd already made. It was one of my own presets. It's like a classic house bass, and it sounds like this. If I take the EQ off, there's the low end. But in the case of this track, we don't want the low end because we have the sub hitting the low end, and we also don't want it to be clashing with the main bass, hence why it has that real short frequency in the middle from the EQ. And you just have the kick and the bass, it absolutely grooves, and you've got that melodic feel. And just instantly, your vibe, you're like, oh yes, sounds sick. If we include up everything else we've spoken about so far, we add drums, and we add the two plucks. And there's like most of the track. So I think the key to this type of music is not using too many synths and loads of sounds, but filling out the frequencies very well with the sounds you are using. As you can see, I have essentially 3 synths and a piano that are filling out the whole mid to high range, and I've got drums filling out the middle and a little bit the high, and I've got the bass and the kick filling out the bottom. I'm not using a lot of sounds, but I'm using them very precisely and with a purpose. That's kind of what I'm going for. To give this track the real feel, the real emotion, you need chords, right? You need piano chords. And in this case, I've got a really simple grand piano straight out of Ableton, nothing spicy, gave it some good mix on it, again, saturation, kickstart, etc, etc. Follow the same progression that you've done on the bass, the main progression, as you can see, there it is, A, C, D, down to F, like that. And what I'm doing here, you can see I'm hitting a lot of octaves because I'm going for that really deep emotional piano. And to get that, you need the lower octaves. If you don't play the lower octaves, you won't get that feel. So if we only play the A2 and then play the triads above it, we get this. Which is nice, but it feels like you're missing something. When you add those deep octaves, so you take the root note, go down an octave, take the root note again, go down another octave, you get a much deeper, heavier piano. So you get it hits those like core, it's like, oh, yeah, it feels a lot better. So definitely recommend if you're going for an emotional deep piano, add more octaves. And yeah, I spoke about the triad. Again, I don't know a lot about music theory. I know triads are cool and they're like the most simple chord you can make. So I take the root note, go skip one, skip another one. I got a triad being 1, 3, 5, and that's it. And then actually also on the 4th progression, I actually hit the 7th as well. I tried the 9th as well. It was too much, but the 7th gives it that little bit of sauce, a little bit of change. And yeah, that progression goes throughout the entire track. Obviously, I came up with the chords mainly for the breakdown because the breakdown in this track has to be epic because it's all in the vocal. So these chords sit really nicely with the vocal, which is something I found on Splice after doing some digging. Look deep for good Splice tracks. Don't use the early audio ones because everyone's used those. I haven't heard anyone use this yet, so You know, I'm on track. But if I play the piano with the vocals, you'll see why it sounds epic with the deep piano.
You make it right when it's wrong in a world that's looking hopeless.
And then with that little bit of rhythm in the piano, it gives it a bit of movement. And that is actually all that's playing in the builder. If I show you the verse start here, it's vocal, then the piano, we've got the plucks playing, right? And in those first 8 bars, some atmosphere, that's it. Nothing else hitting. So it's really all on the piano and getting that right sound on the piano. And once you add the plucks, you have that real groove feel.
You make it right when it's wrong in a world.
See, it's just dreamy. It's dreamy. We're going for dreamy. That's the vibe. As you can see, if we look at the automation, it's all in the automation, this track, because you've got to keep stuff out of the way. With those synth plucks, they're really good, but you've got to keep them out of the way, especially in the build-ups and stuff. And when we're not in the full drop. So as you can see, I'm using a lot of reverb, a lot of delay to push them really far out of the way, but bring them back in the drops. I would say there's 2 bits to this track that are like the secret sauce, as you were, for making melodic tunes like this. And that comes in the way of hitting another synth that's really high, super reverby and super dreamy, and hitting a really deep rees bass that gives you that sort of impact, like a blah, you know, before the drop, because rees doesn't work too well in the drop in my opinion, but before the drop with the vocal makes it epic, and here's how we do it. But yes, I have this cool, weird pluck sound that sounds like this. Straight away you can hear what I mean, that super high octave, super reverby, gritty, it's all over the place, it pans left and right, it gets all up in your business. But it sounds incredible when it comes in.
Music's got me restless.
Right, so we've done 8 and here we go.
Only ever stopped.
Once we pair that with the rees bass, then you know, then you'll know what we're talking about. So it is the Serum Initial preset, 1 saw, really standard, with a good decay on the note play so that it holds for a while. And all I've done is I've put the LFO onto the cutoff and got it to sort of modulate, so it gives that wop, wop, wop sound when it's playing in the background, so you get this. That's all it is, but when you hit it quickly, you get it decays off, but that LFO is still modulating it. And all I've done is I've played a pattern that sounds cool. It took me a little while to get this right, I have to admit, because I'm hitting random notes, but over the course of 8 bars, I'm playing once every 2 bars with it, as you can see, and I'm playing super short notes. I'm on 16ths here, so I'm only playing 16th hit notes, because you want to, whoop, 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 whoop. You don't want to hold these notes out for too long. But again, I'm kind of trying to follow the chord progression where I can. And then the final piece of the puzzle is, in fact, the rees bass, which is the super juice, the solid juice of the build-up. Sounds like this. I'll play it in context, because then it sounds epic. Here we go. So that's in here. It's that feeling. See how much we're missing? As soon as I turn it off, it feels like the whole track's empty. So rees bass, very important for the second 8. And this one, again, it's the chord progression. A, C, D, F, that's it. We're just following chord progression. I am using a silent preset for this. Just found a cool sound. Took the resonance down, the cutoff down, removed the reverb and delay, made a bass sound, saturation. That's it. And that's the only time it plays in the 8 before the build-up. That's it. That's the only time I play it. See, I play it there, and I play it there. That's it. We can talk about build-up. What I did is I sort of looped the last part of the vocal, which was this.
Happiness.
I took happiness and then used that for 8 bars here, threw an echo on it with some relatively aggressive compression, and I got this.
What is this happiness? What is this happiness? What is this happiness? What is this happiness? What is this happiness?
So it's pushing all over the place and it cuts out just before the drop back into the full vocal.
You light a fire in the night.
So I did that. So looking at vocals, I don't know a lot about vocal processing. Everything I know about it, I've learned myself, and I've actually dialed back on the amount of plugins I use and gone for a more Ableton stock plugin use just to really learn about what I'm doing. So I have a de-esser there just to get rid of some of the harshness, because I'm then going to process. I learned that if you de-ess first, even if there's not a lot of lispiness in the production, if you use the de-esser, it means when you then go to boost all the frequencies, you're not going to enhance any sibilance that is already there. And after that, it's a vocal effect rack with an EQ, some multi-band dynamics, some delay and some reverb. And at the end, I've got a mag EQ4 to give it some air, because I like that. It gives some air. And yeah, with and without, it it's night and day, but it's really simple.
You make it right when it's
Without,
wrong in a world that's looking hopeless.
see, it's night and day, but it's just EQ, reverb, and delay essentially, with some OTT, with like inbuilt OTT. That's it. So anyone can do that. Is I took the super wavy top pluck, took that last note and turned that into a pitch riser, so it sounds like this. So it's hitting that same note with the same preset, so it sounds very good with it, but it's a pitch riser. Done very simply, put it on the root note, and then automate pitch bend. And what I've done is I've given the pitch bend inside serum to plus and minus 12, so I can go a full octave either side and get that full stretch of the sound. I'm hitting the pluck throughout the build up as well, just for a bit of source. Again, it's all automated. You'll see the automation is quite heavy on the synth sounds. These follow through. Piano cuts out, and that's about it. Snare roll, standard drum snare roll. Just opening up over the course of the 8, as you can see, with some filters and EQ. Nothing crazy. Good atmosphere that's just consistent throughout. Bit of white noise source in the drop with the shaper box. Learned that from a James Hype trick. It sounds cool if you're missing some top end that you feel like you need some sizzle in the track. And that's it. And in the second drop, I've also got this cool horn. We end up with something like this. Alright, here comes the respace. Right. And if you listen, you can pick out all the sounds that you want to hear, and they're very in a specific place. Here we go. Vocal moves around. Snare roll. Here we go. Oh. It's just dream groove, bro. See that middle synth pluck, constant on the same note. But this other one moves around, playing the chords, same progression. And then in the B section, we take out that lead pluck, and we have a lower sort of formatted vocal. Very similar though. And what I'm doing there is I'm adding an extra drum, a little percussion loop. So it's a little bit of change. And it feels a little bit more downbeat. It's not quite as epic, which is what you want. And I hit that cool whistle, which, it's like, it's just sauce. And that's it. That is the full track. Nothing else going on really. Just standard build-up, layout and all that. So on the mastering chain, it's just some EQ, which I'm cutting off anything below 20 Hertz in the mid and a little bit higher in the sides, because why not? Just to keep up the nice mix and not make it too muddy. Then we've got an audio effect rack with a large reverb, with a short reverb, and a compressor, which just gives it some punch. Just gives it a bit of feel. Sometimes I'll add like a grit here as well. They're all very subtle in the background, so if you're listening to this on like AirPods or without good headphones, you might not hear the difference. Then we got Saturn 2, which I'm using the Faster Master preset on, which again I saw from a James Hype trick. Really simple. It just makes everything, it's like multi-band saturation across. And I believe on this track, that's on about a 60, it's on a 69% wet mix, so it's not super heavy. And then we got Black Box, which is giving it air and more saturation. And at the end I have a shaper box there just to look at waveform, really. A good trick that I learned from a tutorial about looking at waveform, especially if you're a DJ, you want to make sure it looks like what you're expecting it to look like. And then the BX limiter is just making it loud. That's the one that I kept off for the whole video because it just uses up so much CPU, and all it's doing is making it loud and giving it a bit of boom so you can play it on the big stage and play against really good mastered tracks. But yeah, that's it. That is the entire track. Emotions. Gonna try and get it signed. If anyone has any label recommendations that I should try and send it to, link them down below. I've sent it to Experts Only, John Summit's label. So that would be interesting if they get back to me on that. But yeah, that's the full track. It's not too difficult. I think I made the whole track in 2 days. 2 sessions I made this entire thing. And then over the next couple days after that, I spent tweaking the master after sending it around to some people and trying to figure out where it wanted to go. So yeah, I made this within less than a week. Shows it can be done. It just, you have to just dial in, lock in. That is the full project. Thank you for watching. If you want a copy, let me know. If you're a DJ, I can send you a copy because I'm not going to release it yet. But should I release it? Should I self-release it? Let me know in the comments what else you want to see, more breakdowns, so and so. And I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.